Hi, and welcome, faithful listeners, to episode number 2 of the Red Team Draft Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by our faithful cast of Red Team Scouts, starting with the hardest working man in show business, Connor Haar. Follow him on Twitter at Haar Connor. Connor, what's up, my dude?
I'm pretty good. How you doing, Alex?
Listen, I'm ready to kill it, man. We
Me
killed it
too.
last week. We took in what the people told us what they wanted to hear, and now we're going to give it back to them. So you ready?
Let's do it. Let's give it to him.
All right, and I'm also joined by Josh Earl at 2RedJEarl on Twitter. Give him a follow. Josh, what's up, man?
Not much, man. How are you guys doing?
We're just trying to live, man. We're trying to discuss college basketball.
Amen.
We're just trying to live. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, of course, I'm joined by executive producer Eustachio Raleigh. What is up, Eustachio?
Not too much. Finally got to see my Cavs win, but they're still in a stalemate with their acting head coach, so that's fun.
Well, you know what? They'll get it sorted out, and if they'll probably win another title within the next 50 to 60 years. So you're good there.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, guys. So we have an interesting discussion today. We had a little bit of a long form discussion last week. We're going to break it up and really get into the red team scouting concept. We explained what that was last week. We explained what red teaming was, where you sort of attack a held position, try to dissect it to make sure it's as strong as it initially is perceived to be. And that's something we want to carry over. So this week we're going to do a little bit more of a debate format. And we've chosen 3 players who are upperclassmen this year. Shamorie Ponds from St. John's, Rui Hachimura from Gonzaga, and John Morant from Murray State. And we've taken these guys, and what we want to do is we want to see what can, what I want to say is we want to see what can affect their draft stock. We think these guys are polar. We think that they can potentially prove a lot and really jump up draft boards, or if they don't manage to nail down some things, they might not be as successful when it comes time to June. I mean, would you guys say that that is a fair assessment of what it is? I mean, Eustachio, that's what we talked about, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so there we go. That's the concept. We're going to get started. The first player that we're going to tackle is Shamorie Ponds. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to throw it to Eustachio. He's the blue team. He's going to take on the very optimistic outlook of Shamorie Ponds. Then Connor's going to red team him. In the middle, we're going to do Josh and I are going to do a little bit of cross-examination, and then we're going to kind of come to a conclusion at the end. So it's going to be very similar to your high school debate team. We're going to take it away. So Eustachio, I guess, take us away on Shamorie Ponds. He's a 6'1" guard. He's 21 years old. He's going to be going into his junior season at St. John's, and we think that he's pretty polar. So take it away.
I think Shamorie Ponds has a really interesting statistical profile. Ken Pom said that one of the similar players, a couple of freshmen were Jeff Teague and Patrick Beverly, both successful. And then again, in his sophomore season, he had 2 more interesting comps, Kemba Walker and Terry Rozier. So from a statistical standpoint, there's a lot here that says take a closer look, see if there's something that might not be readily apparent. So when digging deeper into his game, one thing that stands out to me is his strong ball handling skills. He's a very good floor leader. He doesn't turn it over very much, and he can get where he wants to on the court, even though he doesn't have amazing burst. He uses his good handle to get to his spots, and he has pretty good court vision as well, although he needs to work on his passing accuracy. But the thing that stands out most to me for him among this draft class is that he's capable of creating separation on the perimeter and hitting the tough shots. There's not a lot of difficult shot makers at the guard position in this class, and his shot making stands out to me. Now, of course, he did shoot 25% from 3-point range last year, but he has a reliable mid-range game both seasons. He shot 86% from the free throw line last year, 82% his freshman year, and he shot 38% from the 3-point line in his freshman year. So although he did have a down year from 3-point range last year, there's a lot of good indicators for his jump shot and his shooting form. He has a quick release, it's relatively smooth, and I think it projects well to the next level. I think he's like a 36, 37% guy. And with that ability to pull up from 3, to work off the ball, I think there's a basis for him to be an NBA point guard.
All right, we're going to have a little cross-examination. Josh, cross-examination question. First one goes to you.
All right. Is Shimori good enough off ball and on defense to stay on the court when he is not the primary on ball guy on the NBA level?
It's a good question, and there is some. That's an important thing because there's so many wings in the NBA today that are able to create shots that you want your point guard not to be just an on-ball guy, but somebody who can work off the ball. And something that was interesting in his drop in efficiency from his freshman year to his sophomore year was just that he ended up playing more on the ball. His freshman year, he had 202 pick and roll possessions and 110 spot ups. That's a solid balanced ratio. But then in his sophomore year, he had I'm sorry, I lost the number here. He 418 pick and rolls to just 94 spot possessions. And so that off balance, too much work on the ball is part of what threw off his efficiency in the sophomore year. He should be working off the ball more, and then he'll be able to take advantage of his solid shooting form instead of just taking the difficult shots. He can get some easy ones in there as well.
All right. Second cross-examination question is me. And Eustachio, given his lack of impressive defensive tools, do Pons' offensive weapons buoy his stock enough to merit a late first to you?
The mention of the defensive tools is warranted. I am worried about his skills on that end, and I think he will be a negative. But the upside he has as a playmaker, as a guard that can work not just on the ball, but off the ball, and his court vision, I think it's worth the bet on the upside because you're not going to find that in the other players late in the first round. So I say yes, that he merits a late first.
All right, we're going to go to the red team argument. We have heard from Eustachio. We're going to flip it over and we're going to hear from Connor Haar. Connor, are you ready to give us the red team argument on Shimori Pons?
I am ready. So I have for Shimori Pons, to me, Eustachio mentioned him creating separation. I don't really think he's that great at that. I think that he creates sort of just enough separation, which leads to him taking and making a lot of difficult shots because he can't create enough separation. And I also think that it's hard to buy an offensive outcome on such a ball dominant player who doesn't have a consistent outside shot, especially with him being more of a change of pace guard off the dribble without very elite burst coming off the dribble. I don't think really his finishing, where he has strong finishing numbers, will be very realistic, that he can't get to the rim in time to finish at the next level. I also think that your defensive concerns are very well documented. I think that at his size, he's going to get played off the court in a lot of lineups, and he's really going to struggle to find a lot of value there where he's not your elite defender with a lot of great tools.
I had my microphone muted. Sometimes that happens. Welcome to live radio, people. Josh, are you ready for the cross-examination of Connor? Are you ready to give to cross-examine the red team? I guess you're red team and the red team.
Yes, exactly. It's red teamception. So Connor, given that he shot 38% from three in his freshman year and that he is an 84% free throw shooter so far in his college career, is it possible that his sophomore shooting numbers represent more of a slump than necessarily a big issue?
To me, I don't really think so. I think that a lot of his shooting inconsistency last season was much more than a slump. I think if you watch his tape, he does a lot of he takes a lot of poor shots, quite honestly, and a lot of it is because he can't create a lot of separation, and also he just doesn't want to. There's not a lot of smart shots being taken by him on the floor. There's a lot of times where he'll heave up those shots with still 20 seconds left on the shot clock.
All right, question number 2 comes from me. If Pons can regain his three-point shooting stroke from his freshman season, how much does his ability to make shots off the ball mitigate some of those offensive concerns, Connor?
I think that's really a question of how good of a shooter he can be. If he ends up being a 38% three-point shooter, I think there's going to be a little bit more of a concern, but not a huge concern because he will have the threat to play off his shot. But if it's not enough for teams to be really worried, he's really going to have a hard time getting into the lane and creating any kind of separation without them having to play up on him defensively.
All right, we're going to go back to Eustaquio for his reassessment. I guess his rebuttal, his 1 minute rebuttal. So, Eustaquio, take it away.
So there were some good points made. I think the questions about his defense are valid. I do think he will struggle on that end. And Connor made a good point about his potentially not being able to get all the way to the rim with his limited burst at the next level. That said, I believe in his shooting stroke. I believe in his court vision. And I think the upside that he has as a relatively young junior, it's merits a pick in the mid to late first round.
All right, Connor, go ahead.
So basically, I think that there's still a very strong argument to be made for and against Pons. I think that if he does shoot, he could be a really good player, and he's flashed the ability to have a really good floater game. And I think that floater game will be consistent to how good he'll be scoring. And I think that a lot of his value is going to have to come from scoring. And without him really being able to create separation as a high usage on ball guy, I don't know how that's going to be a factor for him.
Well, there's the case for Shamorie Ponds. You've heard it both ways. Now, I guess it's up to you guys to decide how you feel about him. Josh, sort of a takeaway on that discussion. How do you feel about him just as we walk away from this thing?
You know, I'm kind of mixed. In a sense, I do agree with Eustaquio that any player that has some decent shot at shot creation ability on the higher level is somebody that's typically worth a first round pick in that mid to late area. On the same token, I'm with Connor in that I don't necessarily trust the shot as much as Eustaquio might. So I'm a little torn, but I tend to kind of lean with Eustaquio in the sense that his separation ability is likely to get him some cachet in the mid to late first.
Okay, he's certainly going to have the ball a lot in his hands at St. John's. We will have plenty of tape on Shamorie Ponds by the end of the year to sort of make a decision and see if he's able to create separation, if he's able to find that shooting stroke. So that won't be a question by the year end. But I'm kind of with you guys. I think this is a very make or break year for a guy who is a junior. He's going to be 21 on draft day, a little bit older. I mean, I think that he has to prove something. I don't think that he's necessarily a shoe-in. So our next candidate is going to be Rui Hachimura. Hachimura is a junior. He's from Gonzaga. He's 6'8", 225 pounds. Had kind of a breakout year. His freshman year he didn't play a lot. Kind of a breakout year in his sophomore season. He averaged 11.6 points, 4.7 rebounds, and certainly flashed some of the physical tools that make him an impressive specimen. But there are holes in his game. Everything is not quite as rosy. But Hachimura is a guy who has generally impressed a lot of people in the draft community. He's generally well regarded. So, Connor, I guess let's start with you. Give us the blue team argument. Give us the optimistic side of Rui Hachimura.
So I'm generally a huge fan of Rui, so I think this was actually kind of perfect for me. I love his physical and athletic traits. He's 6'8", with a 7'2" wingspan and very strong. He's also a very good finisher, in particularly off ball screens, and he flashes the ability to roll really hard off those ball screens. And when he does that, there's really not a lot of defense against him as a finisher with a head of steam. And that also comes into place in transition as well. He has long strides going to the hoop, and he's flashed a mid-range jump shot, which in his ability to flash the mid-range jump shot that he's shown, especially throughout his FIBA time this year with the Japan national team, he sort of unlocks a new place in his game where he can be very effective out of ball screens and be able to sort of attack closeouts with a good handle if his three-point shot does come into play, which I think it will, considering his strong free throw shooting numbers and his mid-range pull-up ability that he showed to make both contested and open mid-range jump shots very easily. And then lastly, I think that he's a very good defender. He's able to defend on the perimeter, especially, which is something that's so coveted in today's day and age. And maybe not necessarily being a ultimate switchable defender, but I definitely think with his strength, length, size, and quick feet, he can guard wings, forwards, and potentially bigs.
All right, Eustachio, cross-examination.
So there's a lot to like with Hachimura, but a lot of it seems to depend on his three-point shot. Do you see any realistic path to consistent rotation minutes that doesn't include him developing a workable three-point shot?
I think that's a very good question because there's a big chance that that does not happen, even though I think it will. But I think that he could fit into certain lineups as almost like a small ball five. And if he can't shoot, but that would require him to be able to defend better as a rim protector. And that would be an element of his game that could make him more appealing, both as being just a general forward, being able to provide weak side rim protection, and being an overall better rim protector so he could fit into small ball five lineups.
Connor, younger players tend to have higher stock because they have a lot more time to grow, 18 and 19 as opposed to 21. Hachimura's entering his junior season. He's going to be playing in the same system, same teammates, same coach. He's playing under Mark Few. He's going to have a pretty similar system. He might even see a decrease in the amount of time he's touching the ball this year. Is there still room for him in this system to show a lot more than what he's shown during his first two seasons at Gonzaga?
I think that he can definitely still show what he can do at Gonzaga next season, because even though he's not necessarily going to have the same amount of touches likely with Gonzaga having a really strong returning roster, he's still going to be able to showcase what they want him to do at the next level, is sort of be a guy that can be very effective in ball screen situations. And he's also did a lot of cutting for Gonzaga late in the end of the year in the NCAA tournament. He's a very instinctual cutter. And I think that that sort of is going to help his offensive production as more of an off-ball guy than an on-ball guy.
All right. We're going to flip it over to Josh. Josh is going to red team us a little bit. Go ahead, Josh.
All right. So Rui, his 3-point shooting is not ideal. He's only taken 40 3-point attempts total in his 2 seasons in Gonzaga. And he's only shot 23% total over those 2 seasons. Furthermore, both his 3-point percentage and his 3-point attempt rate both dropped significantly from his freshman to sophomore year. So he's definitely going to need to not only shoot more frequently, but also better from 3 to really boost his draft stock, in my opinion. Given the shooting issue, I also believe that he'll have to get minutes mostly as a big in the NBA. Yet some of the core things that you need out of your bigs, he doesn't really do that well, such as setting screens or boxing out well. And his length, mobility, and quickness, which I admit are very nice. I agree with Connor. They're good physical tools. But those are going to be mitigated a bit against NBA level talent with similar physical tools. One thing he did well in his sophomore year was drive the ball more. But in reviewing his game film, his drives, both in transition and half court, are not likely to draw as many fouls or clean looks at the rim against the NBA level defenders. And I would imagine, without tightening his handle up, he's probably going to see an increase in turnover rate on the NBA level too. And then finally, his finishing numbers at the rim and out of post-ups look great, but I don't think he has very good touch or any consistent post moves that would translate that efficiency to the NBA level.
All right, Eustachio, counter cross-examination.
What about his defensive versatility? He can defend 3s, he can defend 4s, he can switch to 5s. Does that mitigate any of your concerns about the other end of the floor?
For sure, he has very promising defensive potential, and I would add to it, not only does he have length, mobility, and like quickness, but he also really seems to try. So I do like his defensive potential, with the caveat that so far it seems that he's relying on that length and that mobility far more than he is on sound defensive principles and positioning.
Josh, Hachimura has showcased an ability to play a much more adaptable and complete offensive game when he was playing for Japan in the FIBA games over the past couple of summers, including stretching his game out a little bit. Does the promise of a more complete offensive player dispel any of his concerns about his limited capability at an NBA level?
I mean, it might reduce the uncertainty a little bit, but we're talking about 4 games. And in those 4 games, he still only shot 28.6% from deep. And wasn't particularly strong on the boards. So I still feel like without a significant improvement in his shooting and or rebounding and screen setting, it's going to be hard for him to get significant minutes on the NBA level.
All right, Connor, let's go back to you for your blue team reassessment.
Yeah, I think stuff for Hachimura, specifically like rebounding and screen setting, is very fundamental and elementary things that I think he can learn over time. That being said, I think his shot is definitely a major swing skill for him. I may be more optimistic on it compared to others. It may be because I've seen a lot more of his FIBA tape that people have not have, where I've seen him hit post fadeaways, hit consistently mid-range jump shots off the dribble, attacking closeouts, where that looked pretty good, and not necessarily his shot from 3 still looked like it was all the way there, but it definitely looked like it progressed from pretty much nothing last season. So
Josh, what about your reassessment?
So I all of the things that I said, I completely still believe, but I do also think that his combination, once again, of those physical traits, the length, the mobility, the quickness, and the effort, like, I can't stress that enough. This guy actually tries on the defensive level. That combination with any sort of improvement in his shooting numbers is going to get him drafted perhaps higher than I think he should.
All right, Eustachio, you have sat in judgment listening to these arguments. How do you feel after you've heard both of them?
I'm a bit speculative of his skill set. I just don't believe in the jumper, and without that, I don't see a path for him to gain consistent rotation minutes. He can fit into lineups here and there as a gap filler. He can provide some tough defense off the bench, but I don't see any way he could start without the jumper, and it's not a bet that I would want to make.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think that Connor said it. He said it's a make or break skill, and I think that's so right. If he can show the ability to stretch the floor at the 4, he obviously has the physical tools to guard the perimeter. He's a guy who's quick feet. He's got good instincts. But in order for him to be able to get on the floor, he's going to have to be a little bit more of an offensive plus than what he's shown for me so far. So that's going to bring us to player number 3. We're going to go to Ja Morant. And Josh, you ready to take over leading the show here?
Sure, I'll try. So we're going to quickly discuss blue team and red team on Demetrius, a.k.a. Ja Morant. He's going to turn 20 this year. He's a 6'3" guard, sophomore, 170 pounds. Alex is going to take the blue team optimistic approach, and then Eustachio is going to take the red team pessimistic approach.
All right, I want to start by saying Ja Morant is an explosive athlete. I think that's something that you have to take into account when you look at him. He brings this explosive ability. He's got a great second jump. He can create separation. And to me, those physical characteristics are the first thing you get when you see him. Now, that's going to sort of lend itself to I'm not entirely convinced this class has a lot of guard depth, and I think Morant is somebody who, with a good season, obviously couching everything in Morant improving in the areas that he needs to improve, but with a good season, I think that he can really jump up the board. For me, he might even be the guy who has the most to gain, because I'm not tremendously convinced in the depth, particularly at the guard position. Now, at 6'3", he's probably a 1. He might be able to play a little 2. He is a multifaceted producer. He's a good passer. passer. He has nice vision. He can pass people open. He's also a tremendous rebounder for his size, so he brings a lot of production. He'll only be 19. He'll be about to turn 20 on draft day, so he's still pretty young for his class. But I think the thing that makes him a quality player is he can attack warps. He's really good at he'll attack a closeout. He'll just sort of pump fake, get a guy in the air, be able to attack the warp in the defense, find that seam, get to the rim. And then on the other side, he's also a tremendous pick and roll passer. He's a guy who's shown an ability to, as I said, pass people open, which I think is an underrated ability. Instead of just making the pass that's there, he's creating for his teammates. So I think he has a lot of raw ability. He obviously needs to be sharpened, but to me, this is a player with a lot to learn. I mean, a lot to give.
Cool. Connor, would you like the first cross-examination question?
I don't think I really have any choice since it's on the outline.
It's true, you don't. I was just trying to be nice.
That's okay. I appreciate Josh always being polite. But anyway, so Alex, how do you feel about Ja Morant's pull-up ability? He doesn't have the most consistent numbers, but projecting him as sort of a high usage guy, maybe coming off the bench, where I think he probably has his best value with the ball in his hands. If he shoots well off the pull-up and can develop a consistent pull-up jump shot, where do you feel his ceiling could be?
Well, I think, Connor, I think that's a good question because I think that so much of what he brings to the table is predicated by his ability to shoot off the jump. It's not something he's done a tremendous amount of. I think the physical tools are there. He's just going to have to sharpen it up. He can create space. Obviously, he's explosive and athletic, but you're totally right. This is a guy who's going to have to show that even in pick and roll situations, when he can get us sort of into that middle area, he's going to have to be able to shoot in there. And like I said, I think the physical tools are there, but that is something to me that is an absolute can't miss thing. We talked about Rui Hachimura's can't miss ability being his shooting. Well, I think shooting off the dribble for Ja Morant is that thing.
Second cross-examination question is from myself. Alex, can he improve upon his turnover rate? He was 18% turnovers overall last year, 22% in pick and rolls, and 21% as the ball handler in transition. Considering he's likely going to have an increase in usage where he was only 20% usage last season.
I think he can, Josh. I think a lot of what his ball handling mistakes were due to his youth. This is a player who's really young. He wasn't a highly projected player, meaning he wasn't playing on those high circuits. This is his first foray into really, really high level basketball. And I think if he took what he learned in his freshman season about the speed of play, being able to create using his dribbling ability and his speed, I think that as he grows and as he gets a little bit older, that is one of those things that players tend to grow into. And I think that, taking control and being able to bring down his turnover rate is critical, but I also think it's something that he's capable of doing as he ages.
All right. Now we're going to kick it over to Eustachio for the red team pessimistic approach.
So everything Alex just argued for the positive side is absolutely true. But he failed to mention the elephant in the room, the thing that's going to hold back Morant, and that's his shooting. And his shooting isn't just bad. In my opinion, it's broken. Now, on the surface, the numbers don't look too terrible. 29% from a point guard who's shooting mostly difficult shots seems somewhat defensible. He's 80% from the line. But if you dig deeper, it's pretty bad. On catch and shoot opportunities only, he shot 25%, 13 of 52. And then if you look at his pull-up shooting, dig deeper into that, these aren't your normal pull-up shots where he's doing a lot of work creating separation and then getting off a tough jumper. He's playing in the Ohio Valley Conference. For some context, you have your Power 5 conferences, then you have your mid-majors for like number 6 through 11. And then there's conferences like the Summit League, the Sun Belt Conference, the Big Sky Conference, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. All these rank higher than the Ohio Valley Conference. The shots he's getting are basically unguarded pull-up shots. They're shots he'll only find on NBA practice courts, not during NBA games. And so if you look at his shooting form, it's very slow. He has a pronounced dip in his form. He has an inconsistent trajectory. I saw multiple misses that were wide left or wide right. And so I do not believe it's fixable. The other point I wanted to hit on is that in his one really difficult matchup against West Virginia and Javon Carter, he didn't struggle athletically. He fit on the court with Javon Carter, but the pressure that he received from him, it forced him to rush him a little bit. And as a result, he created offense for himself, but he wasn't creating offense for his team very well in that game. So that concerns me as well.
Good stuff. Let's see. Connor, why don't you hit us with the first cross-examination for the red team?
All right, so John Morant has elite tools and defensive ability at the next level, both on and off the ball, with great instincts and great feet. Is there a chance his defensive value ends up outputting his offensive value in a good way, meaning that he becomes such an elite defensive prospect that his offensive value won't have to nearly mean as much?
That's a good question. And I do like his defensive ability. He's a good athlete, and he seems to have fairly sound technique for a player his age. I think he's probably ahead of the curve in that regard. On the other hand, I don't think he necessarily makes a lot of high impact plays on defense. And I think that you need those high impact plays to uh, reach an elite level of defensive value to like Ricky Rubio can't shoot, but he provides enough rebounding and defense and passing to outweigh that. I don't see quite enough here with Morant to potentially reach a level like that, or like Marcus Smart. I think he's going to be a tier or two below that on the defensive end.
All right. Second cross-examination question is from myself. Eustachio, could greater NBA spacing provide Ja with more open driving lanes, whereas good finishing numbers can perhaps be more impactful?
It's a good question, and there's certainly going to be more space in the NBA. Whether he can take advantage of it to enough of a degree to make him a viable on-ball player, I'm not sure. He was only a 19% usage player last year as a freshman. That's a lot lower than most prospects. You probably need to see that in the 25 range in the NBA to be a viable on-ball lead guard. It's possible, but I'm not sure it's something I'd want to bet on.
Fair enough. All right. We'll throw it back to Alex for his reassessment and conclusion.
I think that Eustachio brings up this point about the shooting, and it's absolutely something that's irreconcilable. You can't he can't become an NBA player unless he can shoot. Now, I think that discussion exists in degrees. I think that if he can improve his ability to shoot off the dribble, he might bring enough to the table, because to me, one of the things when I look at John Morant is I see this raw, athletic, explosive ability, and I see a guy who's a rebounder, a distributor. I see the tools for the NBA. Saying that while Eustachio correct that this is a drop dead skill for him, it's not necessarily, he doesn't have to be one of the best shooters in the country to grow into this thing where a team wants to take a gamble on him. I think that if he can just reach out in degrees, he can find the ability to shoot off the dribble, he can find ways to reduce his turnovers, then I think that this is a guy with enough physical tools to get himself on an NBA roster.
All right. We'll throw it back again once more to Eustachio for his reassessment and conclusion.
I do like the tools Morant has, and Alex made some good points, and I do think he can find a way to get himself on an NBA roster. What I keep coming back to, though, is what's the upside with Morant? He shot 29% from mid-range, the same percentage from three-point range. His catch-and-shoot numbers were bad. I don't see any upside on the shooting, not to a point where it's a weapon, and therefore I just wouldn't take him in the first 45 picks.
And there you have it. I'm going to throw it back to Alex for the overall wrap-up of this pod.
Josh, you did an impeccable job. I have to commend you at hosting the show. We kind of put you on the spot, made you be our spot host. So I appreciate you going in, stealing a base for us, being the pinch runner, just doing all the little things, being the glue guy that we need on this show. Guys, I appreciate every one of you. Connor, Eustachio, Josh, I appreciate every one of you taking the time and sort of digging into this film. I really felt like we sort of embodied the red team approach. We took these players and we broke them down. And I hope that comes across to you listeners who are enjoying the program as well, that this is what we're going to kind of try and do throughout the year. We're going to try and take these players and these situations and sort of parse them and examine them at a little bit of a deeper level. And hopefully that's something that you enjoy. And by the way, let us know. Hit us up at Red Team Scouting. You can hit me up at Alex West NBA. Eustachio is EVRR1022. Josh is 2 Red J Earl. And Connor is Har Connor on Twitter. Hit any one of us up. Let us know. We already got some great feedback this week, and we really are appreciative of it. We're going to be doing this next week on Tuesday instead of on Wednesday. We're going to be releasing on Tuesday morning because, gentlemen, it is exciting. It is college basketball. We're back to it. So before we get out of here, anybody got anything to say? They don't. Oh, maybe
I'm
they do.
good. I'm good.
Good.
I think. Anybody else?
I won't be able to attend next week, but there'll be a guest in my spot. So I look forward to listening to it. And I know you guys are just going to kill it next week.
That ringing endorsement. All right, Eustachio, got anything before we go?
Just wanted to say great arguments from Josh, from Connor, from Alex today. I think we did a great job showing what it means to red team your opinions by cross-examining, looking at the other point of view. That's something we want to keep doing moving forward with this podcast.
And like Eustachio said, guys, we're pumped to do this. This is something we really love doing. I think I have as much fun prepping for the episodes as actually recording them, just kind of digging into our opinions and examining my own biases, because that's something I enjoy doing. Anyway, I've taken up enough of your time. You've listened to me long enough. So for the Red Team Draft Podcast, I'm Alex West, for the whole team here, and we will see you next week for our college preview show. Catch you later.